February 11, 1952, 3:47 p.m., a dress shop in Harlem. Charlie Cross Morrison had a gun pressed against a woman's head. His hands were shaking, sweat dripping down his face. He just escaped from death row 3 days ago. He was desperate, hungry, and he needed money. "Empty the register," he screamed. "Now or I swear I'll." The woman didn't move, didn't flinch, just looked at him with eyes that showed no fear, none at all. "You made a mistake," she said calmly. Charlie laughed, crazy, manic. "A mistake? Lady, I got a gun to your head. I killed a cop. I'm on death row. I got nothing to lose, so empty that register before I—" "You don't understand," the woman interrupted, her voice still calm, still steady. "You picked the wrong shop, the wrong woman, the wrong day." "What are you talking about?" She smiled, a small knowing smile that made Charlie's skin crawl. "My name is Mayme Johnson, and my husband doesn't like when people put their hands on me." Charlie's blood went cold. "Johnson, as in Bumpy Johnson." "That's right, and he's on his way, so you have two choices. You can leave right now and maybe get a head start, or you can stay and meet my husband." Charlie Morrison made 3 major mistakes in his life. Mistake number 1, joining the Ku Klux Klan in 1943. Mistake number 2, killing a state trooper in Georgia in 1951. Mistake number 3, putting a gun to Bumpy Johnson's wife's head. The first 2 mistakes put him on death row. The third mistake, that's what killed him. This is the story of 30 seconds. 30 seconds that became legend in Harlem. 30 seconds that proved something everybody already knew. You don't touch Mayme Johnson, because her husband doesn't negotiate, he doesn't arrest, he doesn't call the police. He just needs 30 seconds and a straight razor. Before we get into what happened in that dress shop, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? New York, Atlanta? I want to see how far this legendary story reaches. Comment your city below, because what happened next was justice. Pure, simple, brutal, let's go. To understand what happened on February 11, 1952, you need to understand who Charlie Cross Morrison was. Charlie was born in rural Georgia in 1918, poor white family, sharecroppers, the kind of poverty that made people angry, the kind that made them look for someone to blame. And in the South in the 1930s and 40s, there was always someone to blame: black people. In 1943, when Charlie was 25 years old, he joined the Ku Klux Klan, not because he believed in their ideology, not because he understood their twisted politics, but because it made him feel powerful. See, Charlie Morrison was a nobody, a nothing, a poor white man with no education, no prospects, no future. But when he put on that white hood, suddenly he was part of something. Suddenly he mattered. The Klan gave him a nickname, Cross, because Charlie loved burning crosses, loved the spectacle, the fear in people's eyes, the power. Between 1943 and 1950, Charlie Cross Morrison participated in at least 7 cross burnings, 3 church fires, and 2 lynchings. He was never arrested, never charged, because in Georgia in the 1940s, the Klan and the police were often the same people. But Charlie got greedy, got reckless. The killing. August 15, 1951, late night, highway outside Savannah, Georgia. State Trooper William Matthews pulled over a car for speeding, routine traffic stop. He walked up to the driver's window, asked for license and registration. The driver was Charlie Morrison, and Charlie was transporting stolen goods, weapons he'd taken from a National Guard armory, guns he planned to sell. Trooper Matthews saw the weapons in the back seat, reached for his radio. Charlie panicked, drew a pistol, shot Trooper Matthews 3 times, once in the chest, twice in the head. Then Charlie drove away, left the trooper bleeding out on the side of the highway. But here's the thing about killing a cop. Doesn't matter if you're in the Klan, doesn't matter who your friends are, the law comes for you. Within 48 hours, every cop in Georgia was looking for Charlie Morrison. They found him hiding at his cousin's farm, arrested him without incident. The trial took 3 days. The jury deliberated for 30 minutes. Guilty, first-degree murder, death penalty. Charlie Morrison was sent to Reidsville State Prison, death row, scheduled to die by electric chair on February 20th, 1952. 9 days away from execution. The escape. February 8, 1952, 2:17 a.m. Charlie Morrison escaped. Along with 2 other inmates, they overpowered a guard during a shift change, stole his keys, made it out through the laundry room. 3 men running through the Georgia woods, police dogs barking behind them, helicopters circling overhead. 2 of the escapees were caught within 24 hours, but not Charlie. Charlie was smart. He knew those woods, knew how to hide, knew how to survive. He stole clothes from a farmhouse, money from a gas station, a car from a church parking lot. And then he drove, north, away from Georgia, away from the death penalty, away from everything. He had no plan, no destination, just a desperate need to put distance between himself and that electric chair. On February 11th, 3 days after the escape, Charlie Morrison's stolen car broke down in Manhattan. Engine seized, dead, right in the middle of traffic. Charlie abandoned the car, started walking, and somehow, without meaning to, he ended up in Harlem. Charlie Morrison had never been to New York, had never been to Harlem, had no idea where he was or what he'd walked into. All he knew was that he needed money, needed to keep moving, needed to survive. He'd been walking for an hour, hungry, exhausted, desperate, and then he saw it, a dress shop, small, quiet, only one person inside. Perfect target. The sign above the door read, "Johnson's Fine Dresses." Charlie didn't think twice, didn't look around, didn't ask questions, just walked in, pulled out the gun he'd stolen from that gas station in Georgia, and pointed it at the woman behind the counter. "Don't move, don't scream, just give me all the money in the register." The woman looked up from the fabric she was examining. She was in her early 40s, beautiful, well-dressed, calm. Too calm. "I said don't move," Charlie shouted again, waving the gun. "I heard you," Mayme Johnson said quietly. "I'm just trying to understand why you think this is a good idea." "What?" "This robbery, you look desperate, scared, like you're running from something, so I'm wondering why you chose my shop." Charlie blinked. This wasn't how robberies were supposed to go. People were supposed to be scared, supposed to beg, supposed to do what he said. "Lady, I don't know what you're talking about. Just empty the register Before you what, shoot me?" Mayme tilted her head slightly. "You won't shoot me, because if you shoot me, you'll never leave Harlem alive." "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Mayme walked slowly toward the phone on the wall. "Let me make a call, then you can decide if I am bluffing." "Don't you dare." But Mayme was already dialing. Charlie could have stopped her, should have stopped her, but something about her confidence, her complete lack of fear, froze him in place. The phone rang once, twice, then a man's voice answered. "Hello." "Bumpy," Mayme said calmly. "I need you to come to the shop. There's a situation." "What kind of situation?" "The kind where a man with a gun thinks he can rob me." Silence on the other end, then Bumpy Johnson's voice, cold, flat, terrifying. "Is he still there?" "Yes." "Good, tell him not to move. I'm 5 minutes away." Mayme hung up, turned to look at Charlie. "My husband's coming. You have maybe 4 minutes to run. I'd suggest you use them." Charlie's mind was racing. Bumpy Johnson. He'd heard that name. Even in Georgia, even in the Klan, people talked about Bumpy Johnson, the king of Harlem, the man who'd sent 5 Italian mobsters back in pieces, the man who'd burned 6 Klan members alive. And Charlie had just robbed his wife. "You're lying," Charlie said, but his voice was shaking. "You're just trying to scare me." "I don't need to scare you," Mayme said. "Reality will do that soon enough." Harlem responds. Outside the dress shop, something was happening. Word had spread, fast, the way it always spread in Harlem. Whispered conversations, quick phone calls, a community network that moved faster than any police radio. "Someone's robbing Mrs. Johnson's shop." "Mrs. Johnson, Bumpy's wife." "Yeah, some white guy with a gun." Within minutes, people started gathering outside Johnson's fine dresses, not rushing, not panicking, just gathering, standing, watching. 10 people became 20, 20 became 50, 50 became 100. They formed a silent circle around the shop. Nobody said anything. Nobody needed to. Their presence said everything. "This is our community. This is our Mrs. Johnson, and you made a terrible mistake." Charlie looked out the window, saw the crowd, felt his stomach drop. What are they doing?" "Waiting," Mayme said simply. "They're waiting for my husband, and they're making sure you don't leave before he gets here." Charlie backed toward the rear door, tried the handle, locked. He tried the window, bars on the outside. He was trapped. "Let me go," Charlie said, his voice cracking. "Please, I'll just leave. I won't bother you again. I'll—" "It's too late for that," Mayme said. "You put your hands on me. You threatened me. In Harlem, that has consequences." The police arrive. Captain Michael Henderson arrived with 4 patrol cars, 8 officers. They pushed through the crowd, tried to establish a perimeter. "Everyone back, this is a police matter. Move back." Nobody moved. Henderson knew most of these people, had worked in Harlem for 15 years, and he understood something that most cops didn't. In Harlem, there were 2 laws, the law he represented, and the law Bumpy Johnson represented, and when those 2 laws conflicted, Bumpy's law always won. Henderson walked up to the shop door, looked through the window, saw Charlie Morrison holding a gun, saw Mayme Johnson standing calmly behind the counter. He knew what was coming, and he knew his job wasn't to stop it. His job was to make sure nobody interfered. Because Captain Henderson was on Bumpy's payroll, had been for years, and he understood the deal. Bumpy kept Harlem peaceful, kept major crime down, kept the mob out. In exchange, the police looked the other way when Bumpy handled his own business. Henderson turned to his officers. "Set up a perimeter. Nobody goes in. Nobody comes out. We wait." "Wait for what, Captain?" Henderson didn't answer, just looked down the street, where a black Cadillac was pulling up slowly. Bumpy Johnson had arrived. Bumpy Johnson stepped out of the Cadillac. Didn't rush, didn't run, just walked, slow, deliberate, like a man who had all the time in the world. He was 57 years old, but he moved like a man half that age, confident, powerful, dangerous. In his right hand, he carried a straight razor. The blade was folded closed, but everyone knew what it was. Everyone knew what it meant. The crowd parted for him, silent, respectful. This was their king, their protector, and he was about to do what kings do. Protect their queens. Captain Henderson stepped forward. "Mr. Johnson, we have a hostage situation, armed suspect inside. I need to." "Step aside, Michael," Bumpy said quietly. "I can't do that. I have a job to." Bumpy stopped walking, looked directly at Henderson, and Henderson saw something in those eyes that made him go quiet immediately. "How much do I pay you a month, Michael?" Henderson swallowed. $500. "And in exchange for that $500, what do I ask of you?" To look the other way when necessary." "This is one of those times." Bumpy started walking again. "Keep your men out here, keep the crowd back. I'll be done in 30 seconds. "Mr. Johnson, if you kill him." "I said 30 seconds. Henderson stepped aside, let Bumpy pass, because he understood something fundamental about Harlem. Bumpy Johnson wasn't just a gangster. He was the law, the real law, the law that actually protected people. Bumpy walked up to the shop door, looked through the window, made eye contact with Mayme. She nodded slightly, signaling she was okay. Then Bumpy looked at Charlie Morrison, and Charlie felt something he hadn't felt in years. Pure, absolute terror. Inside the shop, Charlie's gun was pointed at the door, both hands, shaking so badly he could barely hold it. "Stay back," Charlie screamed. "I'll shoot her, I swear I'll shoot her." Bumpy didn't respond, just raised his right leg, and kicked. The door exploded inward, wood splintering, lock shattering. Charlie pulled the trigger. Click. Nothing, the gun jammed. The cheap stolen pistol from that Georgia gas station had failed at the worst possible moment. Charlie pulled the trigger again. Click again, click, click, click. Bumpy walked in, calm, unhurried, like he was taking a Sunday stroll. Charlie threw the gun at him. Bumpy dodged it easily, didn't even flinch. "Please," Charlie begged. "Please, I didn't know she was your wife. I'll leave. I'll never come back. Bumpy grabbed Charlie by the throat, one hand, lifted him slightly off the ground. Charlie was 6 feet tall, 180 pounds, but Bumpy held him like he weighed nothing. "You put your hands on my wife," Bumpy said quietly. "You pointed a gun at her head, you threatened her, in her own shop in my city." I'm sorry, please." Bumpy opened the straight razor with his free hand. The blade caught the light, sharp, clean, deadly. "This is going to hurt," Bumpy said, "but I'm not going to kill you, you know why." Charlie couldn't speak, just shook his head frantically. "Because death is too quick, too easy. I want you to remember this moment, every day, for the rest of your life, however long that is." Bumpy brought the razor to Charlie's throat, made one precise cut, across, not deep enough to hit the artery, just deep enough to scar, to mark, to brand. Charlie screamed, blood poured down his neck, but he wasn't dying, not yet. Bumpy dropped him, Charlie collapsed to the floor, hands pressed against his throat, crying, bleeding, broken. Bumpy knelt down next to him, spoke quietly, calmly, like a teacher explaining a lesson to a slow student. "You came to Harlem wearing hate like armor. You thought that gun made you powerful. You thought you could take what you wanted from whoever you wanted. But here's what you need to understand." Bumpy grabbed Charlie's face, forced him to look up. "Hate isn't armor, it's a target. A gun isn't power, it's a crutch for weak men. And some women have husbands who will cross any line, break any law, burn any bridge to protect them. My wife is one of those women, and I am one of those husbands." Bumpy stood up, wiped the blood off the razor with a handkerchief, folded it closed, put it back in his pocket. "Get him out of my sight," Bumpy said to Captain Henderson, who'd been watching from the doorway. "And make sure he understands. If he ever comes back to Harlem, if he ever even thinks about coming back, there won't be a second lesson, just a funeral." Captain Henderson called for an ambulance. The paramedics rushed in, started treating Charlie's throat wound. "What happened here?" one of the paramedics asked. Henderson looked at Mayme. Mayme looked at Bumpy, and without anyone saying a word, they all understood the story. "The suspect attacked Mrs. Johnson with a letter opener," Henderson said. "I arrived and subdued him. During the struggle, he was cut with his own weapon, self-inflicted wound." The paramedic looked skeptical. "A letter opener did this?" "That's what my report will say. You have a problem with that." The paramedic looked at Bumpy Johnson standing in the corner, looked at the crowd outside, looked at Mayme Johnson, who was now straightening her dress like nothing had happened. "No problem at all, officer. Letter opener, got it." They loaded Charlie Morrison onto a stretcher, carried him out. The crowd watched in silence as the ambulance drove away. Bumpy walked over to Mayme, checked her over, made sure she was really okay. "You hurt?" "No, I'm fine." "He touched you?" "He pointed a gun at me, but he didn't hurt me." Bumpy nodded, kissed her forehead. "Close the shop for today, come home, I'll make you dinner." "You don't need to." "I want to." Mayme smiled, squeezed his hand. "Okay." They walked out together, husband and wife, through the crowd that parted for them, into the Cadillac that drove away slowly. And behind them, Harlem breathed a collective sigh of relief. Their queen was safe. Their king had protected her. All was right in the world. Charlie Morrison survived the cut, barely. The doctors at Harlem Hospital stitched him up, 47 stitches across his throat. They said he was lucky. An inch deeper and he would have bled out before the ambulance arrived. But Charlie didn't feel lucky. He felt marked, branded, like Bumpy Johnson had carved his name into Charlie's flesh. The FBI showed up at the hospital the next day. They'd been looking for Charlie since the escape. Now they had him. "Mr. Morrison, you're under arrest for escape from custody. You'll be extradited back to Georgia to face execution." Charlie didn't fight, didn't resist, just sat there in his hospital bed, hand pressed against his bandaged throat, staring at nothing. One of the FBI agents noticed the wound. "How'd you get cut?" "I made a mistake," Charlie said quietly. "What kind of mistake?" "The kind you don't survive." They took him back to Georgia 3 days later, returned him to Reidsville State Prison, death row, cell 12, the same cell he'd escaped from. But Charlie Morrison was different now. The other inmates noticed it, the guards noticed it, even the warden noticed it. The man who came back wasn't the same man who'd left. This man was broken, quiet, defeated. Every time Charlie looked in the mirror, he saw the scar, a permanent reminder of his mistake, a reminder that hate doesn't protect you, that guns don't make you powerful, that some women have husbands who will destroy you for touching them. The execution. May 9, 1952, 11:47 p.m. Charlie Cross, Morrison, was strapped into the electric chair. The guards asked if he had any last words. Charlie touched his throat, felt the scar through the prison uniform. "Tell them," Charlie said quietly. "Tell everyone, don't go to Harlem, don't touch that man's wife. Some lessons you only learn once, because you don't survive the second one." At midnight they threw the switch, 2,000 volts. Charlie Morrison was pronounced dead at 12:03 a.m. He was 34 years old, and he died with Bumpy Johnson's mark on his throat. Back in Harlem, the story spread like wildfire. "You hear what happened at Mrs. Johnson's shop?" "Yeah, some fool tried to rob her." "What happened?" "Bumpy happened, 30 seconds, that's all it took." The story got bigger with each telling, more dramatic, more violent, but the core truth remained. You don't touch Mayme Johnson, you don't threaten her, you don't even look at her wrong. Because Bumpy Johnson doesn't negotiate, doesn't warn, doesn't forgive. He just needs 30 seconds and a straight razor. For the next 16 years, until Bumpy died in 1968, nobody ever tried to rob Johnson's fine dresses again. Nobody harassed Mayme Johnson. Nobody even raised their voice in her presence. Because everyone in Harlem knew the story, and everyone understood the message. Some women are untouchable, not because they're weak, but because they're protected by men who will burn the world down for them. Mayme Johnson was one of those women, and Bumpy Johnson was one of those men. Here's what makes this story important. It's not about violence, it's not about revenge, it's about protection, about loyalty, about love. Charlie Morrison thought he could take what he wanted, thought his clan background, his willingness to kill, his stolen gun made him powerful. But he learned the hard way that real power isn't about hate, it's about what you're willing to protect. Bumpy Johnson spent his entire life protecting Harlem, protecting his community, protecting his family, and when someone threatened that, when someone put their hands on his wife, there were no warnings, no negotiations, no second chances. Just 30 seconds, and a lesson Charlie Morrison would carry to his grave. The scar on Charlie's throat became legend. Other criminals saw it when they processed him back into prison. Word spread through the underworld, through the Klan, through every racist organization in America. Don't go to Harlem, don't mess with Bumpy Johnson's people, because that man doesn't play. So here's my question for you. If someone threatened your family, your spouse, your home, how far would you go to protect them? Would you call the police and hope they help? Would you try to negotiate? Or would you do what Bumpy Johnson did, handle it yourself, quickly, decisively, permanently? I'm not saying what Bumpy did was right, I'm not saying it was wrong, I'm just saying it was real, raw, human. And sometimes when someone crosses that line, when they threaten what you love most, you have to become the line, the wall, the consequence. Bumpy Johnson was that wall for 40 years for all of Harlem. And on February 11, 1952, Charlie Morrison learned that some walls can't be climbed, some lines can't be crossed, and some husbands will burn everything down to protect their wives. 30 seconds, that's all it took. 30 seconds to end a threat, 30 seconds to send a message, 30 seconds to create a legend that would last forever. If this story hit different, you already know what to do. Smash that subscribe button. We're bringing you the real stories, the brutal truths about power, protection, and what happens when you underestimate the wrong person. Drop a comment right now. Tell me, was Bumpy Johnson right, or did he go too far? What would you do in his situation? Hit the bell because next week, we're bringing you another legendary story. The night Bumpy Johnson walked into a meeting with the 5 families and walked out with a deal nobody thought was possible. Remember, power isn't about violence. It's about what you're willing to protect, and Bumpy Johnson protected everything that mattered. This is history they don't teach, but it's history that matters. See you next time.